now
정책의
pursuing
중심을
economic policies and
국민과
focusing on the
가계의
income
소득
growth of
증가에
individuals and
맞추고
households.
일자리가
And promoting an
주도하였습니다.
economy where the growth is led
모든
by job
국민이
creation
공정한 기회와
and all people
성장의
can
혜택을
enjoy
누리는
equal opportunities
경제를
and the
추진하고
fruits of
있습니다.
growth.
우리 정부는
This is what we
이것을
call a
사람 중심
people-centered
경제라고
economy.
부릅니다. 고용적
My
성장을 위해
administration's
우리가
determined
시작한
endeavors to
이
realize
담대한
inclusive
노력은
growth will not be
국내에서만
confined to
그치지
our
않을
country.
것입니다.
In accordance
대한민국은
with this new
이러한 새로운
paradigm,
패러다임에
the Republic
맞춰
of Korea will render support
개도국들의
for
지속 가능한
sustainable
개발을
growth
지원할
in
것입니다.
developing countries.
의장,
Mr.
사무총장
President,
그리고 각국
Secretary
대통령,
General, and representatives from around the
나는
world.
전쟁
I
중에
was born in a
피난지에서
refuge town in the
태어났습니다.
middle of the Korean War.
내전이면서
This civil war,
국제전이기도
which
했던
evolved
그
into an
전쟁은
international war,
수많은 사람들의
devastated the
삶을
lives of countless
파괴했습니다.
people.
300만
Over
명이
3
넘는
million
사람들이
lost their
목숨을
lives,
잃었고
and many
목숨을
of the
건진
survivors
사람들도
were deprived
온전한
of
삶을
decent living.
빼앗겼습니다. 내
My
아버지도
father
그
was
중에
also
한
one of
사람이었습니다.
them.
잠시
My
피난한다고만
father, who
생각했던
thought
내
he was
아버지는
taking temporary refuge at the
끝내
time,
고향에
could never make
돌아가지
it back
못한
to
채
his hometown
세상을
before he
떠났습니다.
passed away.
나 자신이
I come from one of the
전쟁이 유린한
separated families, the
인권의
victims whose
피해자인
human rights were violated by the war. The war has yet to come to a complete end. The Korean War, a war that began as an offshoot of the larger Cold War conflict, continues to this day. Though the Cold War ended and 64 years have passed since the conclusions of the Armistice Agreement, the war remains ongoing in the form of an uneasy ceasefire on the peninsula, the last residual Cold War order in Northeast Asia, as tensions soar in Northeast Asia due to North Korean nuclear and missile issue, the memory of war and wounds become more pronounced and hearts aspiring to peace pound painfully. This is the Republic of Korea on the peninsula in September 2017. For me, the president of the only divided country, peace is calling, and a historical duty. I am representing my fellow citizens who sent out a message of peace through the candlelight revolutions to the global village where wars and conflicts know no end. At the same time, I am entrusted with the responsibility to safeguard the people's rights to peace, to an undisturbed daily life as a universal value. For these reasons, I hope North Korea will be able to choose on its own path leading to peace. I believe peace, when chosen willingly, becomes sound and sustainable. More than anything else, I am grateful that my convictions are joined by the international community. Despite the international community's concerted demand and warnings, and to our great disappointment and indignations, North Korea recently carried out its 6th nuclear test and further missile provocations in the wake of nuclear test. The Korean government has made enhanced efforts to convince countries in the regions and beyond of the necessity for stronger sanctions and pressure to make North Korea stop its provocations and chose the path of dialogue. I highly appreciate the UN Security Council's unanimous adoptions of North Korea's sanctions resolutions with unprecedented speed and with tougher measures than previous resolutions. This clearly reflects that the international community is collectively outraged and is responding under one voice on the North Korean nuclear issue and on the problem occurring on the Korean peninsula. Once again, as the party directly involved with issues concerning the Korean Peninsula, I'd like to express my appreciation to the international community for its shared understanding and support toward the positions of the Korean government. Despite North Korea's flagrant violation of its obligations and commitments under the UN Charter, the Korean government and international communities are making every possible effort with great determination to peacefully solve the North Korean nuclear issue. The UN Security Council sanctioned resolutions against North Korea, which have articulated the principles of peaceful diplomatic and political resolutions of the North Korean nuclear issue, are also part of these efforts. Once again, here at the UN General Assembly, where nations pledge actions for world peace and the mutual prosperity of all people, I make the following points very clear to North Korea and the international community. We do not desire collapse of North Korea. We will not seek reunification by absorptions or artificial means. If North Korea makes decisions even now to stand on the right side of history, we are ready to assist North Korea together with the international community. North Korea should acknowledge all these immutable facts as soon as possible. It must immediately cease making reckless choices that could lead to its own isolations and downfall, and choose the path of dialogue. I urge North Korea to abandon its hostile policies against other countries and give up its nuclear weapons program in a verifiable and irreversible way. The efforts of the international community should also be further strengthened. It has to strongly and sternly respond until North Korea gives up its nuclear program of its own accord. All nations must thoroughly implement the UN Security Council sanctioned resolutions and seek new measures in case of any further provocations by the North. It is also important to manage the situation in a stable manner. All of our endeavors are to prevent the outbreak of war from breaking out and maintain peace. In that respect, the situation surrounding the North Korean nuclear issue needs to be managed stably, so that tensions will not become overly intensified or accidental military clashes will not destroy peace. We should all remind ourselves of what former U.S. President Ronald Reagan said: peace is not absence of conflict, it is the ability to handle conflict by peaceful means. We should once again remind ourselves. I would like to make a special request to the member states of the United Nations, and in particular to the UN Security Council. In order to fundamentally solve the North Korean nuclear issue, the basic spirit of security community enshrined in the UN Charter should be fulfilled on the Korean Peninsula in Northeast Asia. The basic pillar of security in Northeast Asia and multilateralism should be wisely combined. The spirit of the United Nations is to realize global peace through multilateral dialogue. The Korean Peninsula is where the spirit is most desperately needed. The realization of peace is the issue for which the United Nations was created, for which it is aiming, and it is which in the process of achieving. We need the United Nations to play a more active role on the Korean Peninsula. The most important role the United Nations is asked to play today is to come up with fundamental measures to stop the vicious cycle of increased provocations and heightened sanctions. On many occasions, I have announced a new economic map for the Korean Peninsula and a new visions for the northern economy. I believe that genuine peace and prosperity in Northeast Asia will begin when the foundation for Northeast Asian economic community is solidified on one side and multilateral security cooperation is materialized on the other. Distinguished President, Secretary General, and delegates. The Olympics had not been held for as many as 1,500 years until it was reintroduced in 1896. The force behind the revival of the Olympics was the thirst for peace. The history of the modern Olympics started with the overwhelming emotions of the first Olympics held in Athens on Balkan Peninsula, which was once the center of conflicts. 5 months from now, the Olympic Winter Games will be held in Pyeongchang, the Republic of Korea. It is the first of series of Olympics to be held in Northeast Asia, Pyeongchang in 2018, Tokyo in 2020, and Beijing in 2022. I aspire for these 3 Olympics to become an opportunity for promoting peace and economic cooperation in Northeast Asia, where remnants of the Cold War and hope for the future, as well as confrontations and cooperation coexist. The Republic of Korea is ready to make every possible effort for that. Please imagine for a moment. People from all around the world who love peace and sports will be gathered in Pyeongchang, which is only 100 kilometers away from the demilitarized zone, the symbol of divisions and confrontation on the Korean Peninsula. Heads of states and governments from all corners of the world will exchange greetings of friendship and harmony. My heart is filled with great joy when I imagine North Korean athletes marching into the stadium during the opening ceremony, a South North Korean joint cheering squad enthusiastically welcoming them alongside the brightly smiling faces of people from all over the world. It is not an impossible dream. To turn this into reality, I will make a wholehearted endeavors until the end in cooperation with the IOC in order to welcome the North Koreans to Pyeongchang Winter Olympics. I hope that Pyeongchang will become another candle to be lit. Like the candles of Korean people held out in the face of the crisis of democracy, I believe that Pyeongchang will become a candlelight that sheds light on peace when peace is threatened. I hope that all of you and the United Nations will light your candles. I hope you will put your hearts and minds together to go hand in hand with peace. Today, with that heartfelt pledge, I invite the head of state and governments from around the world to come to Pyeongchang. The steps you take together will become a march for peace. I look forward to seeing you all in Pyeongchang next year. Thank you.
Au nom de l'Assemblée générale,
On behalf of the General Assembly, I wish to thank His Excellency Mr. Moon Jae-in, President of the Republic of Korea, for this statement just made. May I request representatives to remain seated while we greet the head of state.